When a well-packaged web of lies has been sold, gradually to the masses over generations, the truth will seem utterly preposterous, and its speaker, a raving lunatic. Donald James Wheel, aka Dresden James. Hello, and welcome to Project Terrella. When the author began this channel, over a year ago, it was in the belief that the book would be complete in a few months. Extraordinary circumstances that would be unimaginable for most have delayed completion. During these delays, additional validating materials and evidence have also been found that expanded this project significantly. However, we, humanity, the latest version of genus Homo, and our fellow life on planet Earth are in grave danger. There have been, according to popular science, 5 great mass extinctions since Earth was formed. That is not totally correct. I will explain more in this video. At no point in recorded human history has anyone understood how or why these extinctions occurred. More recently, we anatomically modern humans have been able to derive a great deal of information about our ancestors and other life that existed from the last great cataclysm known as the Younger Dryas, which was about 11,600 years ago. Those events mainly affected North America and Siberia, but froze vast areas of our planet and selectively caused the death of other life. One of our earliest researchers, Professor Frank C. Hibben, Ph.D., archaeologist, anthropologist, and author, described the potential peril we face in his book, The Lost Americans, 1968. Here is an excerpt from that book, as Hibben searched for clues about the Clovis people, who were the first confirmed humans living in North America. Excerpt. Mammals there were in abundance, dumped in all attitudes of death. Most of them were pulled apart by some unexplained prehistoric catastrophic disturbance. Legs and torsos and heads and fragments were found together in piles or scattered separately. Frank C. Hibben went on to write, throughout the Alaskan mucks, too, there is evidence of atmospheric disturbances of unparalleled violence. Mammoth and bison alike were torn and twisted as though by a cosmic hand in godly rage. In one place, we can find the foreleg and shoulder of a mammoth with portions of the flesh and the toenails and the hair still clinging to the blackened bones. Close by is the neck and skull of a bison with the vertebrae clinging together with tendons and ligaments and the chitinous covering of the horns intact. There is no mark of a knife or cutting implement. The animals were simply torn apart and scattered over the landscape like things of straw and string, even though some of them weighed several tons. Mixed with the piles of bones are trees, also twisted and torn and piled in tangled groups, and the whole is covered with the fine sifting muck, then frozen solid. That is the unforgettable aftermath of Earth's last extinction event. Project Terrella will explain it all. If you are enjoying this content thus far, please take a moment to reach up now, smash that like button, and click the notification bell so that you will know when the next video drops. Frank C. Hibben attempted to understand what happened to those Clovis people, the first known North Americans, but found instead the carnage of the aftermath of the animals who lived alongside them. The Clovis people disappeared, almost without a trace, leaving only an occasional spearhead or campfire as evidence that they once walked this earth. In many places such as Alaska, the ground has been frozen for over 11,000 years. In all the time since these animals died, their bodies had never been exposed to thawing temperatures, insects, or other animals that would love an easy meal sticking out the ground, which provided a fertile ground from which to understand their demise. Over the past 4 years, this author has been on a quest to understand our planet, not superficially, but from its first life until today, why it lives, and yes, Earth is the only living, fully functional, rocky body, small-scaled atmospheric terrestrial circuit, in our inner solar system. It was clear that Earth needed to be understood completely for the first time ever. What was absolutely sure is that modern science has it wrong. There was a logical and solid alternative theory of our universe, the electric universe's concepts, but they did not have a strong focus on Earth's processes. That became the author's focus, how life began, evolved, and disappeared from planet Earth. That research project grew to become a fully encompassing and entirely new set of concepts that will greatly add to the already significant foundation of the electric universe hypothesis. Now, let us start the journey together. From the first life. Every mass extinction. The complete rebirth of life on our planet. Project Terrella is a research project into the true basis of our existence on planet Earth. It is a result of a half-decade of research into the whys and hows of our planet. The book publication that will result will represent the first ever true understanding of how our planet actually works, from the first life, through every mass extinction, to the complete rebirth of life on our planet. What the author has discovered will demonstrate, unequivocally, that the entire basis of our current scientific understandings are wrong. This statement is at the known risk of being received as hyperbole, or worse. Moreover, coming from a non-scientist, makes it even more shocking and unbelievable. Yet, initial perceptions have nothing to do with facts. The author's declaration up front is acknowledgement of the challenge of telling a story of great importance to a world that, naturally, will find many reasons not to accept these newly discovered facts and concepts. Yet, this dilemma, when fully presented in book format, will be coupled with what will be demonstrated as the unquestionable and unfortunate burden of knowing and understanding the processes that could represent the end to all life on planet Earth. The author was hesitant to discuss this openly, or prior to book publishing, but there is a growing sense of urgency based around nature's small, yet increasingly louder clues every week. We humans, lost in our sphere of imagined superiority over all things, including nature, have not considered that we are still in an ice age, and the ramifications of that fact. Our planet's normal temperatures are much warmer than the ones that we now experience. Rough estimates of this temperature chart from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration shows that 425 of the last 500 million years, or 85% of that period, Earth's temperatures have been warmer than they are today. Based on that same fact alone, we are still in an ice age, a fact confirmed by NOAA, which wrote, "We call times with large ice sheets glacial periods, or ice ages, and times without large ice sheets interglacial periods." Well, Earth obviously has ice sheets, and the term large is not explained. This same chart shows that the overwhelming majority, over 65% of Earth's last 500 million years has been periods without polar ice caps at all, which would surely mean that Earth is no longer in an ice age, but back to normal, the absolute end of an ice age. Simply stated, ice ages are not the norm, they are intervals between normal times and the prelude to mass extinctions, even though you have been taught that heat is the enemy. The truth about Earth's temperatures are not a secret, they hide in plain sight. A study by the Smithsonian Institution, published in NOAA's climate.gov website, wrote the following, quote, "A Smithsonian Institution project has tried to reconstruct temperatures for the Phanerozoic Eon, or roughly the last half a billion years. Preliminary results released in 2019 showed warm temperatures dominating most of that time, with global temperatures repeatedly rising above 80 degrees Fahrenheit and even 90 degrees F, much too warm for ice sheets or perennial sea ice. This illustrates that Earth's normal temperatures are much warmer than today. In fact, as we examine the temperature chart, what do the timescales tell you? It's not clear. This may help. This is a chart of the last 5 mass extinctions, and their time period. Do you see any correlation? Let's put them together. Now what do you see? What the author sees is a direct correlation of a rapid fall in temperatures and a rapid rise in extinction rates. Look at the chart. At about 444 million years ago, the end Ordovician extinction. Observe the temperature decline just before it. We move to 360 million years ago, the late Devonian mass extinction. There was a rapid temperature drop just before mass extinction, here too. The Great Dying, which occurred 250 million years ago at the end of the Permian period, saw a rapid temperature drop as the last gasp of an ice age just before the Great Dying, what is recognized as the largest mass extinction. That set of reptiles were not right, so at the end of the Triassic period, about 200 million years ago, a rapid decline in global temperatures ushered in the next mass extinction. Not to be outdone, 135 million years later, at what is called the End Cretaceous, about 65 million years before the present era, the most famous of all the reptiles were wiped out, a reptilian species domination that would end forever, though of the few that survived, some still strike fear and distress for some animals, just to get a drink of water. But geologic time is expressed in millions of years, so as stated earlier, we are still in an ice age. 41,000 years ago, the Neanderthals disappeared right here, just after this temperature drop. Everything was getting cozy just under 12,000 years ago, then around 11,600 years ago, this temperature drop happened. You will know it as the Younger Dryas, and tiny by comparison to a mass extinction, saw the demise to the point of extinction for about 40 million megafauna. Temperature drops are not the cause of mass extinctions, they are a symptom and contributing factor of mass extinction processes, just like what are referred to as the Great Floods. Project Terrella will explain why. But the question that remained unanswered is, how do ice ages end? They end the same way they start, with unimaginably violent episodes of upheaval so intense. To view the event is never to tell the story, created not from a comet or asteroid from outer space, but by Mother Earth, who is the ultimate giver and taker of life. What can one expect from the unimaginable? The author's research has concluded and confirmed an entirely new theory of Earth's planetary systems. The carnage that was previously described by Dr. Hibben resulted from raging ion winds, likely exceeding 1,000 miles per hour, 1,600 kilometers per hour, generated by massive columns of superheated ions inside plasma streams that range in size from about 10 to 50 miles, 15 to 80 kilometers, in diameter, thick, some over 6,000, or in some instances over 8,000 miles, or up to just under 13,000 kilometers long. These plasma columns generate temperatures at their outer edges of over 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit, almost 28,000 degrees Celsius, heating their ground level, several hundred-mile wide columns of raging ionic winds to 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit to 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, 500 degrees Celsius to 2,700 degrees Celsius. Nothing along its path can survive it, not plant, animal, bird, or insect. Once the column of plasma ends, there is no atmosphere or magnetic field remaining over the affected zone, so cosmic radiation, along with the icy cold of the outer reaches of the atmosphere, now descends all the way to the ground, bringing its temperatures of minus 150 degrees Fahrenheit, which is equal to minus 100 degrees Celsius, or lower, and cosmic radiation death, with it. Everything is frozen solid in minutes, and if this is a polar area, that is where temperatures will remain for hundreds to thousands of years. One of the most recent cataclysmic periods, as briefly mentioned, the Loschamp excursion, has been pushed to the background, but was just as important as the older and younger Dryas. It was recent information derived from Lake Salina, in Tasmania, Australia, that provided new clues into that recent cataclysmic epoch. Recent core samples show signs that 41,000 years ago, as the aboriginal cultures of the Diary and Garangeri looked toward the heavens, they would have truly seen some spectacular fire in the sky that modern science called legend and folklore. These were not auroras australis, as some have surmised. As Earth's poles battled for supremacy in the early tail end of this ongoing polarity realignment, the sky would have been ablaze across the horizon, although it is doubtful that any people who actually saw the plasma columns would ever live to tell the tale. Yet, the upper levels of Earth's atmosphere would have been ablaze, with afterglow that would have persisted for hours, turning night into brighter than day. The evidence discovered in Australia may also be the best evidence for why the Neanderthals vanished a half-world from there, where, inconceivably, may have been the other end of that column over western Siberia or China. Moreover, that land down under is one of the areas where the demise of the first life kicked off its destruction party, in the Flinders Ranges around 575 million years ago, all the way back to where some of the first life began, in the Pilbara region, 3.5 billion years ago. Just as Siberia, Canada, and China are the hotspots of the Northern Hemisphere, Australia's role in Earth's cataclysms, and as a consequence, evolution is also unmistakable at this point. Many of these ideas will be completely alien to some, and possibly an unrecognized expansion of previous hypotheses for those who are knowledgeable of electric universe concepts. In the development and expansion of these hypotheses, the author threw out all so-called laws, and followed empirical evidence guided by logical processes and scientific principles. The reason for this is it was evident that modern science had left the beaten path. Scientific principles of finding testable theory rooted in observable evidence was gone, replaced instead by untestable theory specifically conceived to meet the deficiencies of the mandatory scientific theories, aka dogmas. Slowly and methodically over decades, each scientific area was given their own religion to cultivate. Scientists must have surmised that if it keeps getting funding, it must be a viable theory, which would be a logical assumption, except that is part of the deception. It is all deception, carefully cultivated into something unrecognizable by anything remotely related to logic or verifiable and testable theories, which have been expertly paraded as scientific fact. Scientific research and outcomes were preordained through careful instruction and rigorous peer review to conform to the accepted science. The aspiring author of the upcoming book, Project Terrella, has had the precarious task of walking the line between protecting the book's findings and discoveries, and sharing information with people with whom the author saw as trustworthy. The author has always provided information to those who inquire about it, in varying degrees of completeness. The view that this was a necessary step in the protection of intellectual property, in the form of ideas and concepts, was a significant concern. It remains as such, yet challenged by very real concerns that some do not want you, the average person, to know what we all face. However, it has become apparent that protection of these ideas has left open the opportunity for people who do not have the author's best interest, or the best interest of anyone else who is not helping them to increase their power, free to fill in the blanks with their own depictions of what the book may be about. Perhaps once every several hundred years, someone comes up with a new theory of how our planet and its life actually work, so different that it changes the course of science. If successful, that will be the final outcome of Project Terrella. The post-concept stage of Project Terrella is the result of about 2 years of relentlessly attempting to find one single hole in the theory, and finding nothing but new and unequivocal confirmation. It is the author's view that the evidence is too consistent and overwhelming to be anything but exactly how our planet works. Electricity is the dominant force in the universe. As stated earlier, 99% of the universe is made up of plasma. The accepted four primary states of matter are solids, liquids, gases, and plasma. Plasma, the least discussed state of matter, is different from all other states of matter as plasma is composed of particles with a net charge. According to the National Center for Atmospheric Research, NCR, a plasma is created when one or more electrons are torn free from an atom of gas. Atoms that have lost some or all of their negatively charged electrons are called ions. An ionized atom has a positive charge because it is missing electrons, but still contains positively charged protons and neutrons, with no charge, in its atomic nucleus. It is the existence of the charged particles that makes plasma electrically conductive. Given the fact that plasma, again, is 99% of the universe, and is a matter in the charged state, it means that electrical charges occupy 99% of the universe, and thus, electricity is the true force that drives almost all processes in our universe, not gravity. Some would lead you to believe that supporters of electric universe process theories don't believe in gravity, which is not true at all. Gravity has an important role in planetary processes especially, although perhaps less in space. While composing this manuscript, the author would have needed to find some way to secure the laptop to the table to keep it from floating away, had it not been for gravity. In all seriousness, though, gravity has an important role to play at the planetary level. However, the process that drives all of Earth's functions is plasma, the fourth state of matter. Ionized molecules, meaning electrically charged plasma, that is in its arc mode on our planet, is called lightning. In the time that it will take you to say the phrase, lightning is plasma, that same lightning would have connected with planet Earth 200 times. On average, our planet experiences about 100 lightning charge exchanges every second, which is about 8 million lightning strikes every day. Everything is electric. Every animal on planet Earth is an electrical being. And we know that a strong electric shock can stop the human heart. We also know that an electric jolt can restart the heart, too. Our bodies, our thoughts, and every movement that we make are all based on electrical impulses. This also holds true for every animal on this planet. Many, even within the electric universe community, have been reluctant to state that our planet is part of an electrical circuit. Many have espoused to the notion that our planet is electrical, but stop short of stating that our planet receives a direct plasma feed from our star. Our planet does have a direct connection to our star, and the author will explain how our planet is wired, so to speak. The author's fascination with gravity goes back many decades, to April 3, 1991 to be specific, a transformational day that could not have been anticipated at the time. That day over 3 decades ago was the first time that the author witnessed a sunset that lasted what seemed like about 4 hours. Though time has lessened the certainty of how long that golden sunset lasted, it was indeed hours. You see, as the aircraft lifted off from Los Angeles International Airport, on the way to a U.S. Air Force Base outside of Angeles City, in the Philippines, it was just before sunset. From the window seat, and the boredom of what would be around 15 total hours of flight time, the author pondered the relationship between flight into the direction of Earth's rotation and forward movement. It was clear that gravity was the reason why that passenger jet chased the sun around the globe, almost in locked motion, yet was traveling in relation to the ground. It was simple enough, until the question arose, at what altitude would we be unlocked from the grip of Earth's gravity, and why? But the most difficult of all were the two questions: what is gravity and why does our planet have it? After a couple of decades of casual investigation, the author had to accept the fact that, actually, scientists don't know the answer to either of the last two questions. Sure, Einstein expertly derived an equation that seems to explain the interactions of gravitational forces on our planet and within our solar system. However, what was not widely understood is that Einstein's theories of gravity break down at the quantum scale, as well as when it is applied at the galactic or larger scale, such as calculating or predicting galactic rotation curves. In fact, it is the failure of that famous equation, E equals mc squared, that forms the basis of many of the dilemmas that are central to the current crisis in cosmology. For the first time ever, the author will explain the origin of gravity and how it relates to the formation of the universe. Gravity is not what we have been led to believe, it is the failure to describe gravity, not how it affects objects, but gravity itself, specifically, how gravity is generated, that is the biggest unspoken problem in modern science. In the study of Earth's planetary processes, specifically the outer layers of Earth's crust, geologists use many rules of nature, described as laws, to provide guiding principles for how each planetary feature functions. A couple of features of note that could allow the viewer to garner more from some of the images of our planet that will be presented here, is the law of original horizontality and the law of superposition. The U.S. Geological Survey writes, quote, "The law of original horizontality says that sedimentary layers are deposited in horizontal layers. The law of superposition says that older rocks are on the bottom and younger rocks are on the top." Unquote. This is important because when you view exposed rock that looks like this, you see these rocks as they were deposited, which depends on the type of rock. The primary rock types are igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic rocks. Rocks that are formed from molten rock, meaning magma or lava, once cooled and solidified, are called igneous rocks. Sedimentary rocks are deposited as fine sands or sediments are wind-blown or as they settle out of water among other ways, then lithified. When existing rocks are changed from its original form by pressure, heat, or other processes, they are called metamorphic rocks. What is important is that when we see rock layers like these, the top layers were deposited most recently and they were originally laid down horizontally. So, when you see rocks that look like this, or these, and this, you can rest assured that something happened to these layers after they were originally deposited. It is what happened to these rocks, from shorelines to mountain ranges, that are the central transformational methods that drives both the destruction and rebirth on our planet. Here is an overview of what Project Terrella will deliver. 1. For the first time in recorded human history, the author will explain the origin, roles, and true functions of gravity. 2. A first-ever explanation of our planet's biosphere, from the source of its heat or cold, to why it spins, how it stores and regulates its energy, to how it generates its gravitational and magnetic fields. 3. The true reason for Earth's elements, including the variations in atmospheric percentages over the eons. 4. How and why the first life appeared on Earth, 4.2 plus or minus billion years ago. 5. Project Terrella will explain how and why, meaning the exact mechanism that explains how life sprang into existence, and how that life later evolved on our planet. 6. You will learn what actually happened during the era called the Cryogenian, aka Snowball Earth. Hint, hint, Earth did not freeze over, sorry. 7. The elusive mechanism behind fossil preservation, including exact location data and time periods for the processes that preserve these, sometimes perfect molds and casts of life forms that lived over 500 million years ago, oftentimes in intricate detail. 8. Project Terrella will explain the significance of the first mass extinction, the Ediacaran, and why, outside of locations where the evidence resides like Canada, China, Australia, and Russia, most have never heard of this first life. Moreover, these organisms are called biota because with the exception of one or two, they have not been classified as plant or animal in the 90-plus years after their discovery, and with decades of intense study since, they finally received formal classification as an era in 2004. As mentioned at the start of this video, since the Ediacaran is still not listed as the first of 6 mass extinctions, even though they were the first and original life on our planet, and are nearly all extinct with almost no evolutionary lineage life forms, that epoch is actually the true answer to Earth's earliest beginning, and remains in the background, hidden in plain sight. 9. Why the Cambrian explosion happened when it did, with such a dramatic shift in body plans, types, and variety of taxa. One thing is for certain, You will not see this one coming. 10. Provide evidence that will render untenable and null the Big Bang, dark energy, dark matter, expansion of the universe, and plate tectonics, with evidence that will be indisputable with any opposing real science, meaning only a belief system could stand in the way of the forthcoming changes in scientific theory. Here we must expound a little because the current situation, especially with dark energy and dark matter, is so utterly outrageous. Of dark energy, NASA said the following: more is unknown than is known. We know how much dark energy there is because we know how it affects the universe's expansion. Other than that, it is a complete mystery. NASA was just as absolute about dark matter, as well. NASA went on to say, by fitting a theoretical model of the composition of the universe to the combined set of cosmological observations, scientists have come up with the composition that we described above: 68% dark energy, 27% dark matter, 5% normal matter. What is dark matter? We are much more certain what dark matter is not than we are what it is. Unquote. So, through NASA's own admission, and by using some very basic calculations, we can state that approximately 95% of the universe is composed of substances, of which NASA has no clue what they are, or how they work. Scientists first discovered this stuff in 1933, and it was so-called confirmed in the 1970s. They have been looking for it ever since, and are no closer to it today as they were in 1933. Dark energy and dark matter are imaginary constructs to explain empirical evidence in nature that does not fit into the mandatory standard model. Nature is not the problem in this dilemma. After around 50 years, using thousands of scientists, and likely trillions of dollars, dark matter and dark energy continue to elude them, simply because they do not exist. The author will explain what cosmologists are confusing with dark matter and dark energy, although the answers are well-established roles within the electric universe's theoretical concepts. 11. Provide a complete breakdown, a totally new concept of our planet's atmospheric systems, which will render any reference to carbon dioxide as an atmospheric driver laughable. 12. Explain and show the exact mechanism for how mountains are formed, as well as how the deepest river gorges, canyons, and steepest coastlines are formed, and why Earth actually has plates. Be advised, however, you won't like the truth. 13. Project Terrella will provide the how, including the exact mechanism that caused the start and end of each ice age. 14. Explain the many instances of volcanic traps, not just how they work, but why they occurred when they did, as well as their intertwined and inseparable role in mass extinctions. 15. Explain the controlling functions of volcanoes, tornadoes, hurricanes, supercells, and lightning, including geographically specific information, their points of origination, and true actuation mechanisms. 16. Explain the existence of important resources, such as oil deposits, gold, and other metals. Be advised, however, oil and gas are renewable energies as well. 17. Point to two or more reasons, the exact mechanisms of each mass extinction in Earth history, right down to the GPS coordinates of the originating events. 18. Explain how, why, the Carolina Bays formed, and when, the year, at least one of the minimum 3 independent sets of Carolina Bays were created. 19. Project Terrella will describe, conclusively, the processes that beheaded the original version of the Great Sphinx and heavily damaged the pyramids. 20. Explain what actually happened in Tal el Hammam, as described in the epic paper. A Tunguska-sized airburst destroyed Tal el Hammam, a Middle Bronze Age city in the Jordan Valley near the Dead Sea, as well as the events that preceded that epoch-altering chain of events. 21. Describe the process, cause, of rapid fluvial discharges and meltwater pulses during the Younger Dryas, including rapid temperature changes, flood plains, gorges, drumlins, and other geographic formation commonly associated with the Younger Dryas cataclysm. 22. Describe the processes that created the carnage seen as piles of dismembered and flash-frozen megafauna across North America and Siberia. The aforementioned are general categories of discussion. There is much more. As the author watched the media blackout on the current location of the South Atlantic anomaly, he has become troubled, both by the urgency for completion of his tasks and the desire of some to make sure that he never tells the world about this. Concerns are not helped one bit by the recent earthquakes in Argentina, followed closely by the more catastrophic earthquakes in Turkey, which are both hotbeds of primordial energy origination on our planet, along with northern Canada, Siberia, Australia, the western United States, Greenland/Iceland, the southern end of South America, North Africa, and Antarctica. All of these areas share a common role in mass extinctions. A worst possible case scenario would be an event in the Venezuela/Ecuador region and the islands north, Central America. Pray that no evidence of planetary disturbance begins to occur in that region. Australia's landscape is some of the best evidence on the planet for Earth's violent rage. Australia's neighbor to the south, Antarctica, is the natural home for Earth's southern pole, and the natural negative polarity exit point for our planet's circuit. Because Antarctica is an exit point for our planet's Birkeland current feed, that region does not experience the wild swings in weather that the northern hemisphere experiences as Earth passes its perihelion, when its plasma feed from our star is wildly offset from its natural and original polar entry point. Be advised that true northern pole position on our planet is not where you'd think that it is. The current feed in the north versus current exit point in the south is why the north experiences polar vortexes, and the south does not. There is so much to unlearn. Plate tectonics is one of the most outrageous of all the scientific religions, sorry. What force could move multi-trillion-ton blocks of crust, which is in contact with other multi-trillion-ton blocks of crust on all sides, through multi-trillion-ton blocks of crust in front of it, sliding past all the blocks of crust that is on all sides, touching with the force of the gravity of an entire planet against the interlocking jagged edges of the adjacent plates? And, look out at the sea floors, and apart from the mid-ocean ridges, where are the tracks? If this were remotely possible, and it is not, there would be massive scrape marks all over the ocean floors. On the trailing end of each plate would be clearly delineated igneous rock with dates that would definitively show the fingernail growth speed movement of these continents from start to finish. Heck, show us just one plate's movement. But what does the plate tectonics theory tell us? Have a look at how far these massive sections of Earth move, all by themselves, and for what reason. The degree that Earth's surface is damaged when objects are moved across it is determined by the mass, weight, and density of the objects involved. All things being equal, the heaviest and hardest objects will cause more damage than the less dense and lighter objects. What happens when massive sections of Earth's lithosphere move? We know how it looks because we can see it at the mid-ocean ridges. When lava created by a moving object cooled, there must be telltale signs. There must be tracks. Go India, go! We know that there would be tracks because at the mid-Atlantic ridge, scientists have painstakingly tracked the new layers that were generated during each mass extinction sequence over the last almost 200,000 years. Also, there would be massive mountain ranges on every plate, or can we do what was sold to us, train lighter plates to just dip down instead of up upon collision? Weight, or mass, is only one factor in the direction of objects in a collision. The angle of the contact surface is most important. Whatever solid object is angled up will move up, regardless of weight. Two flat objects will smash together, regardless of mass. Weight would only determine where the mountains form, and in this case, all things being equal and flat, the thinner and less sturdy seabeds should all have mountain ranges, i.e., the much heavier trains smash tractors and trailers, and as such, tractor and trailers always smash lighter cars. Noah states, the heat from radioactive processes within the planet's interior causes the plates to move, sometimes toward and sometimes away from each other. This movement is called plate motion, or tectonic shift. The mechanism most often stated for the force that drives this movement is called convection, which is liquid magma moving underneath. How swirling magma can cause multi-trillion-ton slabs of rocks to go on walkabout is not explained. It is accepted as fact, but has never been empirically verified or validated through laboratory testing. As for India, based on plate tectonic theory's computer models, it moved from the southern hemisphere to its present location, moving at an unmatched speed to cover the distances for which, based on its modeled location during Pangea, India would have needed to cover about 3,600 miles, or 5,600 kilometers. Where are the tracks? Straightforward calculations say that if we convert India's 3,287,263 square kilometers of land, knowing that we must include the crust that is on average 35 kilometers thick, or 40 kilometers, depending on the source, that would mean that there are, say 35 cubic kilometers for every square kilometer of surface. In order to better visualize this, please imagine a surface area that is 1 cubic kilometer, then add 34 additional cubic kilometer blocks directly underneath that surface block. This represents the first cubic kilometer, so we would need to repeat this same action for every one of the 3,287,263 square kilometers of land in India. Recall that squared surfaces have no depth, and cubic areas can be represented as a square box that is 1 kilometer on all sides. Each cubic meter of rock, on average, weighs 5,515 kilograms. There are 1 million cubic meters in a cubic kilometer, so all we need to do is to first multiply India's total square area, 3,287,263, converted 1 for 1, the square area to the cubic area, times 1 million, then convert that to metric tons. The final step in this oversimplification is to multiply that number by 35, meaning there will be 35 total cubic kilometer sized layers of rock, beginning from the surface and going down to the bottom of the lithosphere, which is comprised of the crust and upper mantle. This means that the relatively small Indian subcontinent has a total weight of roughly 634.5 trillion metric tons, or nearly 700 trillion US short tons. That is a lot of weight to move around in one piece, one would presume, against the opposition of the quadrillions of tons, 1 times 10 to the 15th, or a 1 followed by 15 zeros, of solid crust that is touching with the opposing mass of a planet and its gravity on all sides. When logic is applied, as a plausible concept, one simply cannot reconcile how this theory became, almost a scientific law, which has little or no opposition in geology, or any scientific circle. It is a baffling conundrum. How could some of the brightest people in our society get caught up in this level of groupthink? That is enough about the plate movement until the hard evidence opposing plate movement, and proving what actually happened with Earth's plates are presented in the book. On the ocean floor, instead of tracks, we find the opposite of tracks, namely, towering mountain peaks. A great example of how impossible the widely accepted model of plate tectonics has become are the mountain ranges, not just scattered mountain peaks. At the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, there are mountains virtually everywhere. The Google Earth measurement along the path of this mountain range is rounded to 6,835 miles long, or 11,000 kilometers. Along that range, by selecting a mountain randomly, this peak rises up from the ocean floor by 17,183 feet, which is 5,237 meters. In the Atlantic, the situation is the same, more mountain ranges. Here, off the coast of Africa, this seamount rises from the ocean floor by 15,989 feet, or 4,873 meters. According to the theory of plate tectonics, mountains are formed at locations where two continental plates collide, yet these seamounts, as they are called, are scattered all over the ocean floor, thousands of kilometers from any plate boundary where plates could collide. Again, the geologists were trying to explain what was, up to that point of the original version of this theory called continental drift, was occupying the minds of geologists, who had no serious theories to explain Earth's many otherwise inexplicable crustal features. Why did our planet have plates when no other planet in the solar system seemed to have them? Why did locations, some on land masses separated by hundreds to thousands of miles and oceans, have very similar animals? How do mountains form? What causes volcanoes? These are some of the questions that geologists attempted to find a workable theory to explain. Against many years of fierce opposition, eventually what was considered new supporting evidence won the day for the current theory of plate tectonics. And yes, plate tectonics is a theory. But what about the disqualifying unanswered questions? What force could move slabs of crust, some measured in what may be hundreds of quadrillions of metric tons, all at the same time? Why would these plates move from one hemisphere to the other? And the simplest of all, where are the tracks? We know that seafloor spreading processes create highly detailed records of those movements. They are clearly seen at the mid-ocean ridges. The answer is, apart from lateral spreading, Earth's surfaces are in the same locations that they were nearly 4 billion years ago, and the book will prove this, along with several unquestionable confirmations throughout Earth's history, at locations around the globe. Earth's plates move, but it is more of a small jostle with neighboring land masses than seemingly randomized trips around the world. At the plate boundaries, seafloor spreading occurs when our planet's core is superheated within a matter of hours to orders of magnitude of its normal temperature every time one of those massive columns of plasma erupts. Liquids, even magma, expands when it is heated. Remember that Earth is a closed sphere. She has a few vents to regulate the internal variations in temperature that causes thermal expansion. They are called volcanoes in normal times, traps when all of hell breaks loose. Again, there is so much to unlearn. As Carl Sagan famously stated, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, which was preceded by its likely original axiom: the weight of evidence for an extraordinary claim must be proportioned to its strangeness. Attributed to Pierre-Simon Laplace, 1749 to 1827. The extraordinary evidence requirement has been the author's primary focus, who now has supporting evidence, in spades. Project Terrella's research library currently has at least 3,000 scientific peer-reviewed papers, and an additional 1,000 articles from respected journals on the subject matter, which forms the bulk of the trove of reference material that now exceeds 5,000 references. In those totals are the approximately 100 books that the author has digested in the last 2.5 years, also, at least 75 or so related in one way or another to these topics. Most of the scientific supporting evidence was in existence, but no one ever had a unifying concept to put that extensive research, which ranged over a half-dozen disciplines, into one coherent theory, basically a complete theory of everything. We, Homo sapiens, are entering the most potentially perilous era that anatomically modern humans have ever faced. No previous genus Homo species has ever survived these planet-altering events, at least not in their previous form. If you question this truth, simply ask the Clovis, Denisovans, Neanderthals, Homo heidelbergensis, or any other Homo species. Wait, they are all extinct, never mind. If we are to be the ultimate version of genus Homo, we will need to act soon, and thus, this work is urgent. The carnage described by Hibben is what happened during every mass extinction. Dr. Hibben simply did not know or ever imagine a planetary process that could cause such unimaginably violent destruction. This is also what happened during every ice age, as the presence of the large frozen areas are a byproduct of the plasma streams and the resulting planetary biosphere debilitating processes that accompany them. This is the truth that some will not want known. At the launch of the first video, linked in the description, it could not have been imagined that this journey would become so all-encompassing and take this long. Non-fiction done right takes time. The book is in the home stretch at this point, basically because one must decide when overwhelming evidence is enough proof. Simply stated, in the author's opinion, the theories are absolutely rock solid, and time is running out. Please give the first video a watch as well if you like. Those who lived in the era of the so-called ancients, the living gods of Mesopotamia, as well as the even more ancient Egyptian gods of the first time,
and the builders of Göbekli Tepe,
all of whom, with what some would say was the technological ability to build magnificent structures that still stand thousands of years later, yet we must assume all faced this same challenge, too. Nevertheless, all of these cultures disappeared, and left behind no word of what they endured. In recognition of their magnificent, fascinating, and enduring legacy, the following tribute is just a small way of saying thank you to the ancients. The few initial survivors of the last cataclysm were not able to tell us exactly what happened, but there is considerable evidence that they tried to warn us in very precise ways, another special discovery that the author will share in his upcoming book. No matter where you stand on the ancients, rest assured, you will be blown away by this discovery. Here's to the ancients, enjoy, and we will take up where we left off on the other side to close this out. The viewer must consider that, if we, genus Homo, want to avoid the fate of these groups, as well as the Clovis, Neanderthals, and others, we had better put our best and brightest to work on this problem immediately, or our outlook is bleak. Do you need to be convinced that mass extinctions of the past destroyed all life? Or, can we somehow imagine that this happened to the other humans, and will not happen to us? Imagine this, according to a study published in Nature, of the 4 billion species estimated to have evolved on the Earth over the last 3.5 billion years, some 99% are gone. From another study featured on the National Library of Medicine website, the author, quoting that same study, reached a similar conclusion when he wrote, "The living world is what it is thanks to the speciation/extinction balance, which is fundamental for evolutionary diversification." 99% of all species that have ever lived on Earth, approximately 4 times 10 to the 9th species, have gone extinct over time, most of them without human mediation. Stopping extinction is nonsensical in evolutionary terms and is as unnatural as accelerating it. Unquote. Our planet has experienced an inconceivable number of species extinctions in its geologically short life. These facts are undisputed, yet hiding in plain sight. What has been missing before now and, presumably, throughout Earth's history, has been an understanding of what caused these extinctions, or at least if that information were known, it has not made it into the public sphere of understanding. If we, the most recent version of genus Homo, want to be the last, then there is much work to be done. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, smash that like button, and share. That is the only chance that this video will be seen by enough people to generate a conversation loud enough to save life on planet Earth. Again, please like the video, and let me know what you think about our crisis in the comments below. Until next time, remember, live and keep learning. Our survival depends on it.